Welcome guys, gals and non-binary pals to this week's episode of Buffy Boys, your regular retrospective on Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a queer, literary and feminist perspective. My name is Joel, I'm one of your hosts, and with me as always is your other sun-speckled host.
Brian, how's it going? Good.
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling my skin is clear, my brain is smooth. I'm happy. Are you happy?
No.
Okay, well that's two different ways to start an episode. We are sitting in our recording studio, our complex Buffy Boys headquarters.
Our dining room. Sun is streaming in through the windows. We, as always, have dogs bedogged on the couch behind us. And we are here to talk about many episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer ranked worst to best, specifically 18 of them. Why is that, Brian? It's 18 because in the last two episodes I intended to do 20, but at 21 because I can't count.
We didn't do a degree with... Oh, sorry, I was going to make a joke about how we didn't do a degree in maths, we did in English, but someone who looked exactly like your dad just walked by the window, like exactly like your dad.
I'd be surprised. My dad doesn't walk.
True, actually. I rarely see him perambulate. So we... How do we start again?
We don't really know how to do it, this one. So this episode we're going to be doing episodes 102 to 84, I think. I think that's right.
So our ranking of 102 down to 84 in the great ranking of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
And next week we're going to be doing slightly fewer episodes. Ranking slightly fewer episodes. I have it written in here. Next week we're going to be 15, which is going to be even chiller. So it's going to be great fun. I'm looking forward to it. We had a lot of I feel like these episodes were more difficult to rank than even the previous two ones, because I think those are pretty clear cut. Just they had positive points, but they're overall not great episodes. Some of these are pretty good episodes.
Yeah, so I think in lieu of a Buffy and summary, the headlines themes for this ranking episode is we've moved away from the obviously terrible and obviously forgettable, and there's something specific about the episode that's off, there's something that doesn't work, there's something that's slightly unmemorable about it, this is an okay episode, but there's a better version of this in the show, that kind of thing. And so it actually comes into quite an interesting mixed bag, and it's much more spread out across seasons. Although I will say, I think there's a couple of seasons that definitely aren't represented in this ranking because they're represented higher up.
So true. I mean, the obvious bad episodes of season 2 and 3, I think. I don't know if we've had an episode of season 3 to this point, but they're pretty obvious. And the good ones are really good. So, I think what we're going to have to sit down and do over the next couple of... Because what we've been doing is been ranking kind of up to the episode that we're on. So I think going forward, we might need to just maybe just do the rest of the ranking. Yeah. Just to... Because we know what our top 20, certainly. We know what's in there. And I think maybe even 30, but the stuff above that is going to be, that's all a mess, because it's all really good. And
that might be where actually I think you and I might start disagreeing as we get down to just the best of the best. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think that's where we
have a solid top 5 though, I think.
We do.
Okay. So let's go into the Buffy bronze banter.
It's only been 4,000 episodes, or how many times we said this.
Actually, one thing you tweeted this out, and we had intended tweeting out earlier, but we were too busy. But Slayerfest 98, our big sister / sexier sister /
definitely older sister, though, definitely much older,
but definitely also talked to Stacey Abrams at one point, which is kind of really cool. And Charisma Carpenter and all sorts of people. They recently finished their Buffy coverage. So now is a great time to jump on top of listening to Slayerfest. It's so good. Okay.
This is a great opportunity because you remind me, there's a couple of things I wrote down to talk about at the start of the episode because I keep forgetting to talk about them. Yeah. One is absolutely congratulations to Slayerfest 98. The other thing we didn't acknowledge and we should acknowledge is it was the 25th anniversary of Buffy recently, which gave us life.
It did. It's weird because people keep putting out, being no, today is the 25th anniversary of the episode Witch, and it's it's incredible, but also terrifying.
Yeah. Happy Buffy anniversary to all who celebrate. And the last thing I wanted to mention, because I don't think we've said it specifically, although it is always in our show notes, but now that we've finished our Buffy coverage, we want to thank again, specifically and gratuitously, Alex Heflin, who is the mandolin player who composed? How do you
who
covered?
Did the
performed
the mandolin cover that we use for our
opening
exactly.
music. Yeah.
He also he featured on fucking BoJack Horseman, so he's that good.
Yeah,
but it's one of my favorite Buffy music pieces.
Yeah, when I heard it, initially when we started the podcast, I was like, this is it.
Well, I found it on YouTube, and I was like, Joel, do you think we could, I mean, like, this would be really, if we could find something like this to use, it'd be really cool. And you messaged him and you're like, can we use this? And he was like, absolutely.
Yeah, he's very cool about it.
If you could say thanks, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, definitely check out his stuff. He's just doing some really cool stuff. I checked him out recently, some other interesting kind of projects at the moment. And yeah, you can find more about him in our show notes. But yeah, thanks to Alex Heflin. It was cool. Distinctive.
Okay.
Buffy Bronze Banter. You're infectious.
Yeah. So this week, I think it's been like we got past a lot of media in the last couple of weeks. As in, like, we kind of finished a lot of things, which is weird. But we've been watching a couple of different things. We end towards the end of Freaks and Geeks, and I think you're really realizing the beauty of Freaks and Geeks, which is a really special, because you've never watched it before, except for the first like 3 episodes.
I've seen the first 3. Yeah, so we've definitely talked about Freaks and Geeks before, but that Judd Apatow kind of coming of age type 80s period piece, that a lot of very recognizable megastars got their starting. And yeah, it's one of these shows where I've seen the first 3 or 4 episodes at most several times, and I didn't realize there was more show to it. But yeah, it's been really striking and really emotional, like at times, and quite funny. So I will fully miss it when I finish it. You know, and unfortunately, because
the send off is so bittersweet as well. As in, no, it's beautiful, but it's so like, this could have been brilliant. Yeah, this got cancelled after season 1.
Unfortunately, because they're so short lived, it's actually quite consumable. You know, so we really are burning through it.
We finished a bunch. Finish a bunch of things, but you watched a couple of things. Let me just say that one of the things that we watched over the space of a couple of nights was Drive My Car recently, which is an adaptation of a Haruki Murakami story, a short story by him, who I think most people know Haruki Murakami. I think he might have won the Nobel Prize. No, he didn't. He probably will at some point if he hasn't. For
kickboxing.
For literature. He's a Japanese author. He's written a lot of things. Kafka on the Beach. The story that I read by him is Norwegian Wood, which I believe is very not representative, because he's quite a magical realist in lots of ways and a very unusual writer. And I find Norwegian Wood to be really straighthtraword and bad.
I feel like Norwegian Wood is probably reasonably well known.
It's very well known. It's probably his best, his most widely read work. But he's by all accounts a very, very, very good author who I just don't know very well. But it was directed. It's an adaptation of this movie. It was released just this year. It was directed by Ryosuke Hamaguchi. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I looked it up, and I find it very difficult with Japanese words. Emphasis. I always mess it up a little bit. Emphasis. So he it's a stunning 3-hour long movie about a man driving in his car, and he's an actor and director for theater, specifically specifically the 2 pieces that he's performing through the movie are Waiting for Godot and Uncle Vanya. I know Waiting for Godot very well. I don't know Uncle Vanya very well, and which is a real shame because there's a lot about it.
Exactly, yeah. And he's an actor and director, but like the mechanism that he works through is that all the actors in a show perform their pieces in their native language, which might be different. So there's like a translation and transliteration element to it, performed live, which is really fascinating as it's kind of as a side element of the story, really.
As a text, it's very much about and it's a lot of him driving around his car, other people driving his car for him, etc. It's about loss and love and communication, hugely about communication, and connections. And that all sounds so vague because it's a 3-hour long movie. It's about everything and nothing. It's stunningly beautiful.
Beautifully cinematography, beautifully performed, great music.
The cinematography is really beautiful as well because it's so subdued. It's very often like, when you say like the cinematography of this piece is really beautiful, what you're saying is that it's like bold camera choices or lots of very beautiful out of focus, like, face kind of things, or beautiful colors and stuff. This is really beautiful in the sense that it really draws you to inspect its imagery in a deliberate way, that is really, really intentional and it's
Yeah.
really beautiful. Incredible performances. I cannot recommend it enough. It's been nominated for a bunch of Academy Awards.
It was the first, am I right in saying it's the first Japanese film to be nominated for Best Picture?
No, unfortunately not. It hasn't been nominated for Best Picture as far as I know. Oh, sorry, it has. Okay,
Yeah.
it's Best Picture and Best International Feature Film.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
That's more of a reflection on the Oscars than it is on obviously
100%.
Japanese cinema, but
Well,
it's broken through even that barrier. Yeah.
But thankfully, I think Parasite really introduced people to shut the fuck up and watch movies that are not in English.
Yeah. What was that great thing that Bong Joon-ho said about Parasite? That once you get over the barrier of 2 centimeter high subtitles, you'll have a lot of great cinema to enjoy, or something along those lines. Yeah, I think it was a good bit.
But the other, actually, I think the only Japanese movie that's won the Best International, or the only one that's won it in recent years, was in 2006 with Departures, which is fascinating. It's a really interesting movie about like a funeral director in Japan, which is a culture with like a huge taboo around dead bodies and touching of them and stuff like this. So a person who is a funeral director is essentially like in some ways a social outcast.
Yeah.
It was really fascinating. It was beautiful. I really loved it when I watched it at the time.
Babe,
anyway.
I really need you to understand that 2006 is not recent years. It's almost as old as Buffy, Jimmy.
Well, yeah, I was like, well, yeah, I was going to say, in my lifetime, it's pretty recent. It's actually like half my age ago.
I think as a rule of thumb, if it's before you met me, I think we have to say it's not recent.
Oh God. So the other things we watched, are things that you watched specifically.
Yeah.
So Joel, you went to see the Batman?
I did, and as a comparison, so I watched the Batman, which is the Robert Pattinson Batman film, and Paul Dano and Jeffrey Wright, which has come out recently. And as a comparator,
And who else, Joel?
Zoe Kravitz.
Exactly.
I was trying to remember literally anyone was in the film other than Robert Pattinson. There was many people in the film, but I saw some reviews of Drive My Car, which were like, this is a accomplished but challenging, grueling 3-hour film. It's like the Batman was also nearly 3 hours, and no one was talking about that film like it's a difficult watch. So I think that there's a whole thing there, but it's hard to sell a 3-hour Batman film. You have to like Batman and want to sit and watch that. And
I quite like Batman, and I noped out of going to the film. Like, I mean, the day of, I actually, one of my friends the day before had like messaged me, and she was only in town in Dublin for a couple of days, so I went to hang out with her instead. But I'd already decided I wasn't going to go because I didn't want to sit through 3 hours of the Batman.
You have to be in the mood for it. Absolutely. I will say, I like Batman a lot. I've seen a lot of Batman things. This is a good Batman. Mm-hmm. It is very deliberate. It almost, I was thinking a lot of anime while I was watching it, because it is very emo. It does play a lot on Nirvana. It's very unmeta and unironic in terms of some of its like overly emotional, dramatic styling. But that's at the price of admission. They're saying we're going to do a brooding thing, and we accept that with anime. We accept that with parts of what Angel does, all this kind of stuff. So I think if you accept that going in, it's not an origin story. It's not a big multiverse type thing. It's just a very straightforward detective story with some interesting interpretations, some good performances, and particularly with Paul Dano playing the Riddler, there's a huge amount of DNA in it from the serial killer film Seven. It is a serial killer story set in a superhero city, and is quite disturbing in places as well. So
I'm fully intending on sticking it on in the background while I'm working someday. Yeah,
so I like definitely in the middle of the pack when it comes to superhero films, not in the bottom. So I enjoyed it, and I love the Robert Pattinson kind of bizarre choices he makes. He is a freak. So I have fun at it, but that's you do have to be prepared to sit for a bit and watch it. Yeah.
Okay, should we move into our rankings then, Joel?
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of emotional journeys, which Buffy is often on, for better or for worse, we finished the last episode with Shadow, and then next in our rankings is New Moon Rising from season 4. Is that correct?
Season 4, episode 19. Joel initially ranked this 7.5 Tibetan prayer beads.
And Brian ranked it 6.6 wills, I presume of the I'm dead kind.
No, Willow.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Just everyone kept saying it.
Yeah. So which episode was this, Brian?
This is the episode where Oz comes back in season 4. He has left early season 4 after he's killed Veronica.
Veruca.
Veruca
might actually have been from Angel from the episode last week. Yeah,
he's killed Veruca. He's gone off, and in the meantime, Willow has developed this really beautiful connection with Tara, but kind of Oz comes back and kind of presumes that he has access to Willow in the same way, and
she's waiting for him. Yeah,
exactly. And the opposite is true. She has really like kind of moved on from him. It's a complicated episode in terms of like the bisexual kind of implications or lack thereof potentially, because it very much does, like earlier in the season, Willow nearly commits suicide, where she like wandered out into the street without looking because she was so upset about Oz leaving. So in this episode, it kind of it's an odd one where like no, she does have complicated feelings about Oz's return, but she is far more invested in her relationship with Tara. It's not a bad episode by any stretch of the imagination, except for in the fact that like kind of I would say that Willow's kind of ironed out of the episode in a lot of ways, you know. However, it has a couple of great things. It has Willow telling Buffy about the relationship with Tara, and Buffy saying, "Oh, well, I have nothing wrong with that. I have no problem with that sort of thing," which is a great little moment. And then my last thing I would say is that, like, you know, it ends with the shot of Tara blowing out the candle at the end of the episode, which is a really beautiful, tender, queer love moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I agree. It's definitely not a bad episode. I think the negatives to it are that there is, I'm sure I got into this in more detail when we did the episode on it, there are some issues with it in terms of the bisexuality element and the sexuality element, but I actually, in retrospect, I don't think it's actually that bad in terms of what it could be. There's a lot of it that, you know, particularly for the time it was and what you can pick out of it in terms of the queer representation on this show, pretty good, but also Willow's role is not to represent all women in this situation. Like, it's actually quite a realistic experience for people to go through different sexuality identification and then like not have a really clear narrative about it. So I kind of, you know, I think with the heat being off Buffy, because there's other shows now that do gay shit, you know, it's like maybe an easier one to interpret. I don't think any of the kind of, I suppose, post Oz stuff works great for Oz. Like, there's a sweet spot for him, and he's not really suitable as a character to go outside of that. But
there's also the Institute, or whatever it's called. Also the initiative, like capture him and like, do some tests on him and like kind of torture him, which is pretty not great.
Absolutely, but I think some interesting moments and some interest werewolf lore to it, and specifically in what it contributes to the Willow and Tara relationship. I think if we think of it not as an Oz episode, more of a Willow and Tara episode, it's good. The whole thing about Buffy being mildly, if not homophobic, like not like homo-comfortable, is such an odd note. And
but like she has a moment of it, and then she's like, okay, no, stop that, Buffy. I love Willow. Yeah,
I conflate it in my head with the fact that Buffy is kind of like not friend, doesn't like Tara initially as a person, and doesn't want to hang out with her.
No one really likes Tara as a person. Okay, next up we have The Killer and Me, season 7, episode 13. This is Joel initially ranked at 7.4 Lesbidars out of 10,
and Brian ranked at 7.6 Dancing Schnauzers.
Yeah, so I think this is a pretty recent one, so we know it pretty well. It's the episode where Amy turns Willow visually into I keep trying to say Adam, into Warren, after her and Kennedy have their first kiss, and it's all kind of messed up with like kind of like Willow's kind of last discussion of Tara and stuff like this.
So yeah, this was an episode, as I said at the time, was a surprise.
This is ranked 101.
This is an episode that I said at the time was a surprise to me, because I'm just not super familiar with it at the time. I didn't know Warren came back in this capacity in this season, and I think what I felt at the time was, this is not an episode people remember for its queer content, but I actually think some of the articulation in it and of the differences in Kennedy's journey at her age compared to where Willow was actually fairly modern and fairly effective. I think the whole stuff of bringing back Warren and Willow being in a man's body, kind of quote unquote, and the issues with Tara could have been terribly handled, and I actually think it was reasonably effective and has some interesting things to say. Maybe
it was also well performed, like in the sense that, like, you know, the both Adam
Bush,
and
I'm definitely not saying that correctly, but like it's like Bush maybe.
I think it's Adam Bush and Alison Hannigan, like, both do a great job in terms of, like, you know, how they handle the kind of nuances of the character, like, and how while Willow is losing herself to the Warren persona.
100%. And maybe the one bum note that I remember at the time was that the exit of Amy from the show in this episode, right, is so like incidental.
Yeah, and I also felt bitter at the time about how this is the last mention of Tara. Anyway, okay, should we move on?
Next.
So next episode we have is Bring On The Night. This is season 7, episode 10, and it's at ranked 101. Joel initially ranked it, it's 100. Joel initially ranked it 7.5, falling pieces of inexpertly secured construction equipment.
And Brian ranked it 7.5, weird with a beard.
Great. Bring On The Night. This episode happened, I think.
Yeah, so Bring On The Night is part of the middle of season 7, or the early middle, and it's where there's some effective engagement with the Turakong as a single individual threat. Mm-hmm. And if I remember correctly, this is the one where she is getting kind of her ass handed to her on the construction site.
Okay.
Which is where the construction equipment comes from. And yeah, so I think what we can say positively about this episode is that there are parts of season 7 that are a slog in the middle, and which are slightly aimless, but the concept of the potentials, the concept of building an army potentials and engaging with an ancient enemy vampire, like, is strong on the face of it, and this is one of the better components of that arc. And involves some decent action sequences, and actually as a show it kind of shows, you kind of demonstrates that Buffy the Vampire Slayer managed to keep the action fresh pretty much right up until the end.
On the negative side of it, like, it is kind of, for me, it's quite emblematic of the slogness of season 7, you know, that, like, you know, that drunkenness after him specifically, where you kind of got a bunch of episodes which were just doing nothing much of anything, and kind of like, yeah, Buffy and the potentials in the house doing stuff, and it's like, I don't care. I think Spike was getting tortured by the first, probably. And it's like, cool, great. But yeah, at the same time, that same thing with season 7, where it's like, it's hard to hate it at the same time, because like, the interactions are good, the drama is good, the choreography is often incredible. Yeah, so complicated one. So should we go on to the next one?
Let's.
Here's one that we do not have to look up the information about. No, it's not. It is a different one, because I have the stuff mixed up.
Transposed.
So next up we have, at number 99, we have Flooded, which is season 6, episode 4. Joel initially ranked this 7.8, rank arrogant amateurs.
And Brian ranked it 8.1, tiny kings.
Yeah, so this is the episode where Buffy's kind of coming to terms with the fact that she is back. And she's having financial difficulties. So her basement floods.
Sorry, I wasn't expecting you to put it so bluntly.
And yeah, we do have that interaction between Giles comes back, having heard that Buffy has been revived, and he has that really intense interaction with Willow, where he basically, like, yeah, he calls her a rank arrogant amateur as a witch, which kind of sets her off on the course that she's going to go on in this season. Yeah,
and it has some good dynamics around, you know, how by season 6 are we looking at the pseudo-parental relationship Giles has with both, with all the Scoobs, but very much with Buffy and Willow. And it's between that and the money troubles, like, I think people say kind of, you know, the adult responsibilities part of Buffy's life is not everyone's most exciting part of her adventure, but there is something relatable there, and how you awkwardly kind of evolve out of a teenage mentality into an adult mentality, and then interact with people like Giles as a person rather than as a figure. So while it's not the most exciting theme, it might be some of the most substantial theme.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's an M-Fashioning theme in. Which is important to note. It's also the episode that introduces the trio. So there you go. Yeah, I don't have any issues with this episode, but I'm also, you know, it's not one that sticks out. Okay, next one does stick out. At number 100, at number 98, we have The Harvest, which is season 1, episode 2. Joel initially ranked it 8 pool cues out of 10.
and Brian ranked it 6.5 heads up. And I see here noted as well, Brian, that you have opined that is the worst audio of our entire podcast.
It's undoubtedly the worst audio of our entire podcast. Yeah, it's really fucking bad. So this is the second part of the opening, like the pilot of Buffy, you know? So what I would say about it is that while Welcome to the Hellmouth has like iconic moments, like it's so much fun to watch now, and it like, you know, is messed up in terms of like, you know, how it's communicating Buffy and its characters. It doesn't know what it's doing with its characters yet. I think like The Harvest doesn't really do much.
Look, I think comparatively, I will say, and I'll put my colours to the mast, even when they're objectively poor produced or poor plotted, like I will always like a season 1 or season 2 episode, you know. But that kind of maybe outside the objective quality of them. And yet Welcome to the Hellmouth has all of the explosive nervous energy of a first episode, and while The Harvest is kind of close to it in terms of you know, what's happening, it probably has the less memorable actual plot to it, and some of the more clunky stuff with like Luke in it as well.
Though you do have like Darla like skipping towards the bronze, and then them like just like generally eating people at the bronze. There's a shock of Jesse getting turned, which is like a big, like, you know, defining moment of like, you know,
shouldn't
like,
be underestimated as a good plot point.
Though of course done to death by Joss Whedon afterwards. Grant. Okay, next up at number 97, we have Smashed, which is season 6, episode 9. Joel initially ranked this 7.7 frozen rusties, or rated, I suppose. I can't remember. I keep saying rated and ranked interchangeably, and that's okay.
Well, we rate the episodes and now we're ranking them.
Okay.
This is literally the kind of stuff I talk about, unfortunately, all day in work. That apparently there can be very important differences between scoring something, ranking it, and rating it. And then Brian rated this episode 7.6 high school's kinda overs.
So this is the episode, it's one of the trilogy of episodes where Willow is basically falling down the magic hole. In this one, what is happening is,
this is the one where Amy is deratted.
This is the one where Amy is deratted. So, and they go to the bronze and they do stupid magic. This is also the one where Buffy and Spike destroy the house by fucking it to death.
There's a lot of like weirdly, so there's the excitement of bringing Amy back and kind of the start of the fun start of the part of the bender and all that, and there's just a lot of really, like, I wouldn't even say controversial, but like erratic stuff in this episode, because there's them smashing the house down, Buffy and Spike with their sex, and then there's also the magic that Amy and Willow do in the bronze is like kind
really
of
not okay. It's kind of like they there's a guy who's homophobic, so they make him a go-go dancer, and they were like, initially the writing was that they're going to make him kiss one of the other boys, which is like, hey, you know, homophobes aren't secretly gay, they're usually really straight. So they put him in go-go dancing boxes, cages instead.
So it's the kind of thing that on TV it's like you can glance over it, but like, oh, whatever, and when you really think about it, it's like, no, that, and I think there's something there about potentially turning them into women, or turning someone into women, they Amy tries to make one of the women at the bar who's hot flirt with Willow through magic, and is like, oh, here, let me just get you this woman who I will control into having sex with you. So a lot of stuff there is like you don't really want to think about it too closely, but no. in fairness, like, it's one of these classic TV things Buffy does, where Willow's like, hey, I think this is kind of not okay, as opposed to being like, okay, that's good, but like, you have to say this is really not okay.
Let's clarify. It's good fun watch though, and it's definitely the highlight of that trilogy, I would say. At number 96, we have The Dark Age, which is season 2, episode 8. Joel initially ranked it 7 diatries. I'm not sure what that meant. No, I can't unpack it. That's apocrypha. Someone can go back and figure out what I was trying to say there. Yeah. And Brian ranked it 6.9 bacchanals. I'm fine with that. This is the episode where Ethan Rayne is introduced. There is the statue of Janus, which what is it that is it No, Statue of Janus is Halloween. Sorry. The Dark Age is the one with Ethan Ring is in it, but it's with Igon the Sleeper, who. So this is the episode that is most very deeply linked to Giles as Ripper. Yes, and their friends who performed a ritual back in their college days, or their
their wild 20s. One of the friends died, and now it's coming back to harvest them, and then eventually possesses Jenny Calendar.
Yeah.
And it's defeated because it jumps into mysterious man Angel, who already has a demon inside of him, so that's how it gets defeated. So
And he's like, I've been battling a demon inside me for years,
yeah.
etc. Yeah.
So I like a lot of the kind of.
It also shows, like, I mean, it kind of is a preview of Angelus, which is kind of interesting as well.
So I like the ghost story qualities of this episode. I like Ethan. I like Ripper. I like, at this point, having Mr. Giles' past come back to haunt him, kind of thing, is a very interesting element. In actuality, there's a lot of the episode which has some of his old friends, some of whom are more or less unnamed, in ill-fitting funeral suits getting possessed. So there's actually a bit of like running around in corridors in the middle that I think drags it a little bit, which is why it's not more of a classic episode. But the concept is really strong, and Ethan and Giles together always works really well.
Yeah. Next up at number 95, we have Double Meat Palace. You knew this was coming at some point. People might be disgusted by how high we have this. Fuck you, honestly. You. If you're disagreeing with me right now, fuck you. So Jill initially ranked this 7.0 uniform slices of chicken byproduct.
Brian ranked it 7.0 cat burgers. Ding, ding, ding. Equal ranking.
Yeah. Actually ranked it. Oh, sorry. It is 7.0. Yeah. Yeah. This is obviously Double Meat Palace. Everyone knows Double Meat Palace is where Buffy needs to get money. So she starts working in a fast food place. She is convinced that they are it's a Solent Green is made of people.
Yeah.
Kind of situation. It's weird. It's
penis head monster.
Penis head monster. It's Lynchian. Willow's quite good in it. It is funny and stupid.
One of Sarah Michelle Gellar's most thorough comedy episodes.
I would totally agree. She banks out of the park. What doesn't have going for it is that the monster is kind of stupid, and the conclusion of the episode is that Buffy continues to work there, and the burgers are made of plants.
Yeah, and isn't there a whole thing? It's like, yeah, it's double meat because it's like a chicken on the front and a cow on the back. I'll tell you, I'll say this about Double Meat Palace. You remember watching it.
Oh,
Do you know what I mean? Like, people remember this episode and have strong feelings about it.
I think the cinematography is really well done. I think the acting is really well done. I think it's a joy to watch. I'm fine. I have no issues with Double Meat Palace whatsoever.
Actually, a departure is always a gamble. This is a departure that works.
I agree. And it just like, I think it is effective. Okay, next up we have number 94, which is Amends, season 3, episode 10. And Joel ranked it 7.9 primordial Oberithian demons out of 10.
Yeah, and Brian ranked it 7.0 heartier beaks.
So I think this is probably our most controversial ranking so far.
Yeah, potentially. So that is Oberithian, as in the quality of an ancient demon.
Okay.
So Amends is the episode where that introduces way back in season 3 the concept of the first.
Yeah.
And speaks through Jenny Calendar, and there's a lot of tormenting of Angel specifically.
Who's been recently brought back from hell.
Yeah, with the intention of having him kill himself in the sunrise, and then eventually there's a miracle and snow falls in Sunnydale, blocking out the song. So yeah, I think this is an episode that I think we would argue that you remember, because of everything I've described in terms of the plot, you remember it as being maybe a better episode than it is. But the main quality that I think we were like, why it's not higher, is it's a little like after school special or melodramatic, or
it's also, for my money's worth, extremely Jesus-y.
Yes,
there's a huge amount of Christ imagery in this episode in a way that just doesn't fucking work. It's hokey and stupid, and just like it's so like melodramatic, and I don't think it's very Angel-like. You know, ultimately, I don't think Angel, like, if he's having this dark night of the soul, I think he does it quietly, not this dramatic silliness. Yeah,
and it's actually an episode that I think, if you look at the series as a whole, kind of hangs worse in retrospect, because it does, now they can't have known this at the time, but it does hang particularly poorly with Angel's later characterization, even before we get into, you know, him well changed by the end of Angel, but just him as kind of a character. But also you cannot make the argument that any intention of the first evil in this being anything further down the line. And to introduce a character for this episode that just or a monster that just incidentally is the first and potentially never coming back to it, I think it's like a weird writing note as well. So there's some memorable stuff. It's a very memorable episode, and it's a very well-known episode, but maybe not super watchable.
Yeah, and additionally, there's things like Willow is going to great lengths to get like Oz back at this point, because it's after her and Xander have been caught making out, and that works. And Xander tries to get Cordelia back by kind of giving out to her, honestly, after she's been impaled on a spike, and he's just gross towards her. That kind of, I really hate that plot line. I love Cordelia.
And lastly, it ends as the episode, incidentally, where there was someone won a sweepstakes challenge to be a guest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
we did spot her.
Actually, no, sorry.
No, this is where it was advertised.
It was advertised in the episode, and then
she
she's in the graduation, I think.
It's actually prom.
Not graduation, sorry, prom. The prom episode, yeah.
Okay. At number 93, we have Bargaining Part 2. That was Season 6, Episode 2. So Bargaining Part 1, I actually really like.
Yeah, and I'm just curious for this episode. Who rated what for this episode, do you think?
Oh, yeah. Joel ranked it 7.5 finger razors.
And Brian rated it 7.3 bad wigs.
Very good. Okay, yeah, this is the part 2 of the opening of Season 6. It's kind of a slog.
Demon bikers,
Buffy wandering in a bad wig through Sunnydale with a tremendous amount of Vaseline on the lens of her eyes. And it ends up with Dawn, the most mature child of all time, going to finding Buffy at home and trying to take care of her, essentially. There's a horrific scene where the Buffy bot gets torn apart. It has lots of positive to it. Like it's good drama. It's exciting. It's
scary.
Event television. It's scary. It's one of the scary.
Sunnydale feels scary. It's an episode that it may have had a content warning, but I always think of the bargaining episodes as being like, this is like 18's television.
Well, this is when it just moved to UPN, so they are stretching their feet in terms of like doing grimmer stuff. Ultimately, and it feels threatening for sure, and it feels like event television, so it's good in all those ways, and also has like some negatives, but I have no major issue with it. It's just not as strong as Bargaining Part 1.
Similar to other two-parters and other openers we were discussing, it doesn't have the pizzazz of the first episode. It's kind of, it just has more samey content in episode 2, and more of it's more chewy. But it's definitely not a bad episode by any stretch of the imagination, but just not as exciting as the first one. So I think it comes down on that.
100%. Okay, at number 92, we have Life Serial, Season 6, Episode 5. Joel initially ranked at 7.9 Daddy Hands.
And Brian ranked it 7.9 neutered vampires who cheat at poker. Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. Okay, this episode is the one where Buffy is still getting back into her life post coming back to Sunnydale, having been dead. And what's happening here is that she is really struggling with it, but the trio are also putting her through a bunch of tests. So she goes to the construction site. She's invaded by the demon who Andrew, I presume, conjures. Andrew doesn't do... Anyway.
No, he does conjure demons. He's a demon guy,
Yeah. And Xander's mean to her because...
she's trying to find things to fit into. She's working on the construction site.
Mm-hmm.
And the demon's invisible? Is he invisible?
No, it just disappears after a while. And it seems like Buffy's just like making it up.
Sure, yeah.
Then there's an incredible sequence where Warren sets the time loop in... No, sorry, it's actually... the next sequence is her in college, and Jonathan does the weird like time loop button thingy where she keeps like going forward like weeks and days and stuff within the college grounds, but she figures it out. And then the third part is where Buffy is trapped in the magic shop on a loop, trying to figure out how to like do the right thing with the demon, with the mummy hand, which is where you got the daddy hand from.
And can't get out of it until she resolves the sequence correctly, which overall, this is the episode where Shane's talking to Spike, is that correct?
No.
Okay, that's something else. But in terms of this we're very much getting into the meat of the trio stuff here and how much you think the trio works, and the answer is sometimes. Mm-hmm. And this is a great example of this, where there's part of this episode which her engagement with them, their engagement with her, doesn't really make a lot of sense and is a bit cringy. But and definitely we have this season 6 problem of people just kind of treating her poorly for some reason, like her friends. But some of the actual sequences of sex up, and in particular the like the enclosed skit that is the magic box time loop. Perfection.
Oh,
Great.
beautiful, wonderful. And it's also like, it's good in terms of the metaphorical like kind of nature of the of what Buffy's going through in this season. Okay. Up next we have Goodbye Iowa, which is ranked 91. It's season 4, episode 14, and Joel initially rated it 8.4 self-insert floppy disks out of 10.
Brian scored at 8.3 sex spells.
Yeah, it did. Okay, this episode is an episode that surely did happen. I would suggest it happened for a whole 40 minutes.
42 even, maybe.
42 minutes. That's kind of mad. That's the extent of what I know about Goodbye Iowa, I would say right now.
What are the big memories you have, the big iconic Goodbye Iowa scenes?
Well, I just looked it up, and Adam kills Professor Walsh. That's good. I don't like her. And is that it? Is there anything else happen in this episode? We ranked it rated it quite high for the time. Anyway, yeah. So Professor Walsh has been killed, and there's a rogue warrior team on the loose. Riley becomes paranoid and delusional because he's been fed drugs, I believe, and yeah. So
I think in the season 4 development, what we liked with this episode was this is where it escalates, and we have that the development of that turn of Maggie Walsh being dead and Adam being the actual big bad. I think there's a lot of him out in the world interacting and playing with different things. Him putting floppy disks into his chest hole, and generally the initiative setup starting to unravel and starting to deliver on that promise a bit. So.
I think he doesn't meet that child who he asks about like the world and stuff, and then he just disgustingly kills the child, like skewering him and stuff.
Yeah, I think that might be this episode, or if not this episode, like that is he approaches a young boy and questions him about his nature and kills him, basically. Yeah. So there is, this is probably the most, in some ways, kind of the most threatening Adam seems is at the start.
I think this episode we might have ranked it a bit higher because it had a lot of Frankenstein content, and we got to talk about Frankenstein a bunch, and we really like Frankenstein. I think that might have contributed towards it.
But I'll put it this: I'll justify it by saying that as an Adam episode in season 4, it's a good one. Yeah.
Okay. Next up, at number 90, we have the Yoko Factor, season 4, episode 20, and Joel initially rated this 8.7 Fort Dixon's. I have no idea.
Correct. And Brian rated it 8.0 catnip problems.
Yeah, so this is the episode. It's it's the episode in my memory where Spike is sowing seeds of doubt through the Scooby Gang, because season 4 has really been about like splitting the Scoobies up for the inevitable rejoining in Primeval, where they come together and work together. I think as well, isn't it like the Angel turns up in this episode, and that kind of like throws some question marks between Buffy and Riley, and I think those are the major factors in it, right?
Yeah, so we have a confrontation between Angel and Riley in this episode. So I think it's good insofar as it gives an effective contrast on that relationship, and like that's the kind of interaction we've been waiting to see. In terms of Spike, he's at this point working with Adam, and I think it has everyone kind of in their best modes. We have like Angel often works best in antagonism to someone else, Riley having to define himself against Angel, and Spike working to the negative purpose of his truth telling, essentially, and kind of working in an almost like Shakespearean fashion to undermine the group. So it's a very strong character dynamic episode. For me, it's also, there's an element there of the bizarre inconsistencies of Spike's portrayal. What I tend to enjoy the episodes where he's kind of exemplifying his evilness more, which is this is definitely one of them, rather than the ones where he's like a soft puppy because the viewers liked him, So yeah, cool. Okay, next up we have Entropy, season 6, episode 18. Joel initially ranked this episode, this is number 89. Joel initially ranked this 7.9 3/4 full bottles of not Jack Daniels. And Brian ranked it 7.5 covers in bandages like a quilt. Beautiful.
So this is the episode where we had to look up, I would say, while ranking these, about 5 times to figure out what actually fucking happened in it. So Anya's been left at the she's only come back into town. She's been left at the altar by Xander, and she's talking a lot to Halfrig about how to kind of figure out how to deal with him. what we have is I think like Anya like really going through the ringer of it, where she's trying to persuade someone to say mean things about Xander, so that, or gets him to wish ill on Xander. Yeah. Right? Is that this episode?
It's also very much, it's a very Anya-centric episode. It's very much her being able to take center stage and deal with her rightful feelings about Xander and what he did to her. It's also the episode where she has sex with Spike on a table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's also,
which is an interesting moment, isn't it? Like, actually, where there was a lot of like Spike sexual stuff in season 6 where I find really gross. I think that was a genuine moment of connection between two people, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
then Xander becomes really possessive of Anya because he obviously sees this in a really gross way.
Yeah. So in terms of the dynamics around romance and the hurt there, this is actually one of the stronger examples of that. This is also the episode that ends with Tara going back to Willow after they're falling out over her magic abuse and saying that, you know, it's going to take a really long time to rebuild the relationship, but instead just kiss her. Yeah. And that's what it ends on. I think really that queer content also kind of ups our rankings for it as well.
Yeah. Okay, next up we have at number 88, Showtime, which is season 7 episode 11, and Joel initially rated this 8.0 residual neck puncture wounds,
and Brian ranked it 7.8 unprompted telepathic conversations.
Beautiful. So this is the episode where it looks like Buffy is losing the faith of the potentials and the Scoobies, but instead she has contrived a situation where she's going to bring the Uber Vamp to the construction site and murder it. And she does a great job of it. And it's actually, you know, in a season full of speechifying, pretty good speeches in this one.
Yeah, exactly.
And good action as well.
So this is the counterpoint further up the list to bring on the night. And probably the confrontation with actually dealing with the Turakong and using it to educate a group of young women in terms of, you know, that evil can, like, if it bleeds we can kill it, essentially. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the strongest examples of general Buffy, particularly in the first half of season 7, and probably my favorite action sequence in the season up until Chosen and everything to do with Chosen. So yeah, it kind of really delivers on the promise of the Turakong, and it gives an element of lift, I think, to the middle of the season when there is a lot of just how bad things are generally and how the world is going to end, but no one has anything funny to say about it this time around.
Yeah. I think you're right about all that. Yeah, and like, you know, I'm not offended by this episode by stretching the imagination. It's also a little unmemorable, but also, like, you know, obviously high quality. Okay, number 87, we have Superstar. It's season 4, episode 17, and Joel ranked it 8.1 Jonathan's.
Yeah, it did. Brian ranked it 6.4 Latin in front of the books,
which is one of my favorite Buffy jokes of all time. Don't speak Latin in front of the books. Yeah. So this is the episode, obviously, where Jonathan manipulates the universe into thinking that he's a hero, unlike Buffy. It's a lot of fun.
It's so weird because he's a hero. He's the main hero while textually Buffy is still the Slayer. Mm-hmm. So like this episode for me all hangs on whether you accept this alternate universe premise, whether you, I suppose, like Jonathan enough for this episode. I think we obviously really differ in terms of, like, at the time how much we enjoyed watching the episode comparatively. But I do think I love an alternate universe. I love an alternate timeline. I love people acting, particularly on this show, people acting out of character. How many episodes are they when Buffy's like, gosh, Jonathan or Spike, or this is so wonderful, can't wait to get married, can't wait to be Jonathan's right hand girl, etc. You know, where she just does that. Sarah Michelle Gellar knows she's saying something crazy but really selling it. You know? Yeah. I think that I give them props for redoing the title sequence for it. I enjoyed that, and the level to which they try to retroactively look at the previous seasons, but looking at it as if Jonathan is there instead. I just really enjoy it. The central monster is not a monster because it's just the episode essentially coming to kill him. And I think Jonathan has a really up and down portrayal across all 7 seasons. It really is just used and changed as needed. Yeah. But I enjoy it.
Yeah, no, it's good. I can't remember what my major criticism was at that time. I think I might have not enjoyed a lot of the parts of the episode, but like obviously overall as a premise, it's a lot of fun and it's kind of stupid. And also I do love a format breaking episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And Buffy does them so well. Yeah.
At 86 we have Gingerbread, season 3, episode 11. Joel rated this 7.2 stage rats.
Brian ranked it 6.0 neck ruptures.
I like this a lot. I like the thematic stuff of it. I think it's stupid. I think it's scary. So
this is mothers oppose the occult, the Moo, early Buffy, Joyce and Willow Rosenberg's mom get involved with
Kathy?
Might just be Miss Rosenberg,
okay,
or Mrs. Rosenberg. But this is where there is a Hansel and Gretel demon that convinces the town to burn witches. It's an Amy episode, it's a Willow episode. Bizarrely, the mayor is involved here as well, even though it's not, it's a rare mayor episode that's really not about the mayor at all, and he doesn't really know why it's happening. Very memorable, I think.
And importantly, Joel, what does it feature in this episode in terms of what you like?
Man,
Michael the Boy Witch.
Oh, Michael the Boy Witch, yeah. He is fun, and he was Boy Witch was my Twitter appellation for a long time.
Yeah.
So I enjoy this episode for the amount of, it's like maybe one of the last hurrahs of maybe the show is about a lot of different supernatural things.
Yeah, no, it really is. Yeah, no. And it works, and I like it. I like the grim stuff of it. I enjoy it. I enjoy the stuff. I enjoy the thematic elements of it. I've already said that. I think it's good. I like it. I think I was a person in this situation who was like advocating for it to be high in our rankings, and I only gave it a 6.0 initially. But I want to go back and rewatch it because I enjoyed it. You know, that's okay.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things about this long form project is you do tend to one tends to rate things for different things at different times depending on how long you've been doing it for and what season it's in. So like that's why it's useful to like overall rank them.
Yeah. Okay, next up at number 85 we have Nightmare, season 1 episode 10. Joel rated it 8.2 seductive clown chocolate bars out of 10.
Brian Rantic 7.0 questionable swastikas.
There's no other kind of swastikas, let's be real. Yeah, there are swastikas like drawn up on the wall when Xander's wandering through the clown. So this is the episode where there is a boy Billy who has been put into a coma by his
baseball coach,
league
coach or baseball
who has then become real because he is in a coma and he's in a wacky. No, it's not a Rocky Brother in Nightmare. I always think that reference is to this episode, but it's not.
So that reference in Once More We're Feeling is to what happened in this episode, and it's suggesting erroneously that it's happened again in Once More We're Feeling, but instead the boys dream about Broadway.
What's the line? Oh, okay, yeah, okay, beautiful. So yes, this is the episode where he's in a nightmare. He's having a nightmare, and he's influencing everything happening around him. You get things like Willow going up on stage and having to perform a moment's notice, which he's terrified of. Xander's terrified of clowns, so he has a killer clown coming after him. Buffy is terrified of her father leaving her, which does happen, and telling her he doesn't love her anymore, which does happen basically. And Giles is terrified of Buffy becoming a vampire.
Yeah, so...
And the Master comes as well.
Yeah, exactly. And like really the first season really focuses on her not knowing if she can defeat something like the Master, which seems so funny in retrospect. So this is an early episode. This is a Monster of the Week episode. This is lower production value like a lot of season 1, but I think this episode shows a lot of the potential of this show. The monster is scary.
Yeah.
The nightmare format is used to interesting effect by itself, but they're all used to effectively progress character development. The interactions moment to moment in terms of Willow on stage, in terms of Giles' fear for Buffy, in terms of Buffy interacting with her father, are all played absolutely straight and are very strong. And yeah, it's really iconic to me, this episode. And also
I remember watching this for the first time. But I had the Buffy DVD, so this would have been like, what is it, like 11?
Yeah, and this is the only episode in Buffy where you see Buffy in vampire makeup.
Yeah, it's notable for many reasons. I love this episode. It was one of my favorites when I first watched Buffy.
If I was flicking around Buffy, I just want to put on an episode pastime, I might put this on.
Yeah. And what I would say as well is Sarah Michelle Gellar's performance when she responds to her father saying, like, you know, you've just turned out worse than we expected, is truly heartbreaking. It's in a show full of Sarah Michelle Gellar incredible performances. It's one of them.
yeah.
Okay. Next up at number 84, we have Phases, which is season 2, episode 15. Joe initially rated it 7.9, 1800. I'm dating a skinny hoe out of 10.
Brian ranked it 7.6 single entendre, and this, Brian, is our last ranking for today.
Yeah, it is. So this is the episode where it's the episode where Oz becomes a werewolf, and there's werewolf hunters, and there are the interactions between Oz and Willow. It's all very fun. One of my favorite parts of the episode is where Oz calls his cousin or his aunt and is like, "Hey, is
cousin Kenny, I want to say.
Is cousin Kenny out? Yeah, where? Okay, yeah, you knew. Okay. And it's full of like just good Oz moments like that. And I think it's kind of gotten high up here because it's really inoffensive.
It's inoffensive. It shows.
It's offensive in the werewolf costume, but otherwise it's fine.
The werewolf costume is quite the gay possum at times. This is a really important episode, I think, for the structure of the show, because the werewolf stuff ultimately did not really develop as well as it could have in the show. But
Geordie,
okay, cousin Geordie. What it did show was that the show could effectively do other things. It could effectively introduce a new character like Oz and problematize him and give him his own thing without it coming across as everyone has to have a thing.
Yeah. I think we also thought at the time it was an interesting exploration of, like, you know, masculinity and the implication of kind of like, oh, there's a monster inside everyone, where Oz is saying there's a literal monster inside of me, but I'm also not a bad person. Yeah,
exactly. And like how and where does that line get drawn? And it was a different angle of the conversation to the vampire angle.
Yeah, you know what I'll say for it, that really stands up in retrospect, is that often when you get a great episode of Buffy, you get a really shit one coming up really soon afterwards. So you get the body and then whatever episode that was, I can't remember. Forever. Or Once More Feeling, the episode that came up after Once More Feeling, I'm pretty sure it's shit. But this came after Surprise Innocence, one of two of the, I mean, potentially highly ranked episodes.
We'll see.
No spoilers. But and this is really good. It's really good fun, and it's funny, and it's I would say it's probably my favorite. It is my favorite Oz-centric episode.
Yeah,
I like Oz.
I like Oz too. Okay,
that's us done for today.
Yeah, we are rated and ranked and scored and bedraggled and bedribbled.
Yeah. Okay, lovely. Should we move into the Cordelia Chase?
Let's do so indeed. So over in the Cordelia Chase this week, we had two very
shit episodes.
Two very Wolfram and Hart-centric episodes.
For sure.
Of season 5. We had Life of the Party and The Cautionary Tale of Numero 5. So these are very embedded in the work of what does Angel Investigations look like when they're working at Wolfram and Hart, and actually trying to do some good through things like effective relationships with pre-existing evil clients, but not so evil that you have to kill them, and finding ways to work through the law to one of the examples they use in this episode is set up a foster home for people whose parents have been killed by vampires, and stop industrial dumping of like demon blood, etc. So it's really, really embedded in the set of Wolfram and Hart. The plot of the first episode is a Lauren-centric episode, and it is Lauren organising a party for the office, which will effectively charm various important contacts and will satisfy the employees, raise morale. And the point being that this is Lauren articulates this is his only function that he can do here, that everyone else has a special ability they can do. What he can do is the people management side of things, so he needs buy-in for that. And over the course of that, we're introduced to a couple of major players for the later half of the season. Angel has sex with Eve because they're under a mystical influence. We introduce Archduke Sabasis, who is one of the major players in the Circle of the Black Thorn, which is the closing arc of this season of the show. And overall, we get a sense of so kind of along the lines of Something Blue from Buffy, where because of mystical shenanigans, Lauren's subconscious is influencing people to do exactly as he says. So everyone is acting really drunk because he suggests that they loosen up and get drunk, etc. Gung is peeing on everyone's furniture because he has to mark his territory, and so on and so forth. And then secondly, after kind of we have that exposure to the kind of the inner workings and the aim in The Cautionary Tale of Numero 5, we take a sharp left turn where the episode entirely focuses around a heretofore unseen employee of Wolfram Hart, who is a elderly Mexican man who's dressed in a Mexican wrestler's luchador mask and delivers the mail. And an ancient, I'm going to say this as verbatim as possible, an ancient Aztec warrior demon returns every 50 years to find a MacGuffin, and they steal the hearts of heroes. And they find out over the course of the episode that 50 years ago, this man, numero cinco, or number 5 as they call him completely interchangeably in the episode, him and his other 4 brothers, whose names you can probably work out, were 5 heroes who defended the Mexican area of the city, and 4 of them died fighting this monster. And then he has a whole thing where Angel talks about what it means to be a hero. Spike talks about what it means to be a hero. Spike, maybe the most useful aspect of the episode is Spike finds out that about the Shanshu prophecy and that a vampire with a soul may live if they survive the final battle. And there is some shenanigans which allows the 4 brothers to come back from the dead momentarily, for all 5 of them to fight, and for numero cinco to die with a redemptive moment. So,
did you know this about the writer of that episode? Did you read this?
I think I read that he had always wanted to write about Mexican wrestlers.
Yeah, and I read that and I was like, that's so sweet. And then I watched the episode and I was like, oh wait, no, it's bad.
Life of the Party works better of these two. It is slow in some places, but it is really unburdened as an episode. Lauren, I find ultimately maybe breaks on me a little bit as a character.
Me too. He's just like, I mean, if he actually was gay,
yeah,
great. But like, I mean, there's just sometimes he's singing and sometimes he's using stupid voices, and I'm like, yeah, I don't care. It
breaks me a bit, but I think it's a strong Lauren episode.
Sure.
And Andy Halleck carries it. I think the mechanism of having people act out character is such a established one for the Buffyverse, and I think it works really well here. Freg and Wesley drunk and like just trying to use an elevator, like I watch a whole episode of those 2 actors together, and they have great chemistry together.
And she breaks his heart because she tells him that she's actually interested in
Knox.
Yeah.
But all of that is great. Some of the demon stuff is really interesting. There's some funny Joss Whedon-esque lines in it that are actually unfortunately land for me. Overall, a fun, silly, stupid episode. I would say a high 6.
I was just going to give it a 6 feminist gestures. Yeah,
it's a high 6 feminist gestures for me, because while it's like not a important episode, it was fun. I thought it was fun. I can't say that I have anything specifically wrong with the cautionary tale of numero cinco on merit, except it is completely bizarre as an episode of this show. It
wasn't very watchable.
It wasn't. It
had an extended flashback sequence with extensive luchador wrestling, which cool, but if you don't like that, it was really not that interesting.
It was almost like a crossover episode from a numero cinco show that doesn't exist or something. Yeah. So while it's a very interesting thing to try,
it's a great point actually. You did feel like a crossover episode.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to try to rate, because
it's not 5 failed feminist gestures.
5 failed feminist gestures is the rating, but it's an atypical route there, because it's not a bad episode if it was anything you wanted to see.
Exactly.
And let's make it clear, it's nothing to do with obviously the Mexican Day of the Dead, luchador content. All that is potentially very interesting, but it's just so out of place. And our main, the last thing I'll say is our main.
I think that does that specific thing very well. Guacamole, both games, so absolutely good. Go on.
The last thing I'll say on that is our main characters are absolutely tertiary supporting characters in this episode. Inexplicable. 5 failed feminist gestures. That's my review.
Me too. Okay, I think we're good to go then.
Great. Well, folks, thanks for sticking with us. We are coming down now to the second half of our ranking. I'm right in that, am I, Brian?
Yeah, we're going to be entering the second half in the next episode, in which we're going to be rating ranking episodes 83 to 83 minus 15, whatever that is. That is 78. No, 68.
I think what we can say is about these episodes is you'll recognise their names.
You do recognise them. I mean, we've had a look at a couple of them. There's some great stuff in there. I mean, like, I think The Witch is going to be in there somewhere. School Hard. Primeval, potentially. We'll see. So yeah, interesting.
Absolutely. And we're getting into more, I think, faith content and season 3 stuff as well.
I don't think we're going to have any faith stuff in this. Oh, maybe some tertiary faith stuff.
Yeah, tertiary, exactly. But we're nibbling at the edges of it now.
The faith proper content, usually we're going to rank those things pretty high, I think.
Okay, folks, thanks so much for joining us. We're always happy to have you with us. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know. Tell your friends, tell the out-of-place luchadors in your life, and we will see you next time right here on Buffy Boys.
Buffy Boys.
See ya.
See ya.
Thank you, B-Ron.
Thank you.